Ian Civil, let's start at the beginning. What led you into a career in medicine? Was it something you'd always had in mind?
Definitely not. There are no doctors in my family, and I had no presumption when I went to high school that I would end up in medicine at all. It was one of those purely fortuitous decisions that was made in my last year of school. A number of kids I was in the same class with decided that they'd apply for medical school, one of the first applications one had to have in. So I applied, and as it turned out, I didn't need to think of all of the things that would follow from that, because I got onto medical school and just followed on from there.
And what about the decision to take up surgery? That's not the sort of choice that one more or less stumbles into.
No, although some people do have a long determination to do surgery, I wasn't one of those. I went into my clinical training and I had a very open mind as to what I might want to do. I loved medicine when I was doing my medical part. I loved all sorts of things, but surgery just seemed to be something extra. I think I'd perhaps look back now and say that perhaps it was a slightly naive view, but I thought that surgery meant that you could be a great doctor, a great diagnostician, and operate as well. And it seemed to me to add on an ability or competency onto basic medical training and not give anything away. I think a physician would now look at the competencies I have and say they're fairly limited in relation to the overall diagnostic aspects of medicine as a whole, and I would certainly agree. But at the time, I was keen to be a good doctor and be a surgeon as well, and be an operative doctor as well.
And was that how it worked out for you?
Pretty much. I finished my medical school training, and I did the standard 2 years in general experience as an intern and house officer, and in those days applications for surgery were much more rudimentary. There was no interview, one just applied, and as long as the people in the suits thought you were of suitable quality, then you got on. So I applied, and in my third year I was a surgical registrar and began what was then only a 4-year training program in surgery leading up to the fellowship examination.
And how did you approach the development of your career in surgery?
Well, I suppose as things went along, I did develop a view. One of the things I was particularly interested in within surgery was trauma, or the overall management of patients who suffered injury, and I looked hard for experience that I could accumulate in order to become an expert in that area. I was particularly interested in the emergency side of it, but in those days emergency medicine as a specialty didn't exist, so it wasn't something that was ever on my radar, and indeed trauma wasn't really something I could achieve as a specialty training as well, or either. So I determined that vascular surgery involves treating people who are bleeding, and even today we're often the specialty of last resort when people get into real trouble, because it's often as a result of bleeding that people get into trouble. So I focused on vascular surgery early on, and I went and did a fellowship in the US training in vascular surgery, and then I did find some openings for extra training in trauma and did that as well, and brought those two competencies back to New Zealand when I came back to definitive practice.